A 999 special tonight, 9:30
to air
BBC
in
One.
10, 9,
In half an hour, we
8,
see our regular
7,
visit to Ramsey
6,
Street.
5,
Before that
4,
on BBC One,
3,
the 1 o'clock news
2,
with John
1,
Chester.
0, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Run A, Nick. Thank you.
Broadcast news is very important to tell people about the world, and to be a trusted source of information is something perhaps in this country we take for granted. And English, of course, is our currency. Words is how we do it.
The plane, a twin-engined MD-83 belonging to Air Tours, was bringing back holidaymakers from Las Palmas in the Canary Islands. An inquiry has begun into the circumstances of the crash landing.
The undercarriage collapsed on landing.
White. Thank you.
I think news matters because it is a daily record of what is going on. The basis of news is not necessarily to interpret or to analyse, but it actually is to give it straight. It's a sort of tablet of record of the day.
Cut. Thank you.
And at 26 minutes past 1, the main news again.
Go take cut.
Broadcast news has come a long way. Seen in the early days as very much the poor relation of the press, the first bulletins were often newspaper stories, simply read aloud on air. What television news has evolved into is a distinctive way of using pictures and words together that seems to tell us the truth about the world.
The headlines tonight: NATO annulled after delegate swallows treaty. I'm so sorry, yells exploding cleaner.
It's the brash self-confidence of the news that can make it an easy target for parody.
Those are the headlines. God, I wish they weren't.
The Day Today set out to be important. It is the most important news programme that has ever existed for eternity. Globe after globe representing different facets of the news. There's the science globe, the geography globe, the technology globe, the money globe, bursts out at us from this background mush, the primeval swamp of graphics. It announces itself as the most important thing that has ever been on television.
Hello, sir.
And the musical chords go on for slightly too long. And that's the key to understanding the day-to-day. It's exaggeration of something that already exists. We didn't really create a new way of speaking. All we did is took what was there and pushed it a teeny bit further.
The Day Today, because fact into doubt won't go.
And we've just heard that areas in 3 of Britain's biggest cities are being evacuated due to suspect dogs.
The fictional news series The Day Today was first broadcast in 1994, sometimes revoicing existing news footage, but more often using actors to manufacture its own. It set out to blur the boundaries between fact and fiction.
But as the remains were being taken for laboratory tests, a second dog ran out from the crowd. It could have been a bomb.
The aim of the Day Today was to authenticate the absurd. People did turn on during the Day Today and think it was another news programme until they came across something and they just thought, hang on a sec, that can't possibly be true. Policemen can't be going around shooting dogs. It looks true, it seems true. The editing is true, the shots are true. It breathes news.
This evening, a monument had been built, marking the end, perhaps, of the relationship between man and dog, which today went from this to this.
Right, we now move on to scripting moving pictures, the most exciting skill in the television journalist's armoury.
These young journalists are right at the start of their broadcasting careers. Selected for the BBC's prestigious journalists course, they're 8 weeks into their 4-month training. Having spent time in radio, this is their first taste of making television news.
Remember, like radio, they only hear it once. So try and make it easy for them to absorb.
Their first task, to script a set of shots about freezing weather in Moscow. They can draw on a press release giving the background to the story, but it needs condensing into a 10-second introduction to be read by the newsreader, and then a script that fits the 24 seconds of picture.
We've done some work in radio before, but this is the first time most of us have come across to work in television, so it's a new experience completely. It's fairly easy to know what the story's about. It's more difficult to match the words up to the pictures. You have to think about the picture that's coming on screen and try and match the words up, and that's fairly difficult, getting the timing right, getting the right numbers of words for the minutes that you've got.
A cold mass of air has swept across the former Soviet Union, sending the temperatures plummeting to minus 20 degrees centigrade. Scientists at Russia's Meteorological Institute say that the severe weather is on its way to Europe. The Russian countryside is always prettiest when it's under snow, but people are struggling to cope with the adverse weather conditions, which is cutting off roads and is causing delays on the Russians' rail network.
In television, a vast amount of the information is delivered by the pictures. And that, to begin with, I think people coming from radio or print find that very difficult to understand. The more words you have doesn't necessarily mean the more comprehension. In fact, what we often try and stress to the trainees that actually less is more.
Monitors at Moscow's Meteorological Institute show that November's temperatures have broken all records this century. Moscow may look pretty in the snow, but 8 people have died, and many are being treated for hypothermia. Whilst Britain won't get that cold, sub-zero temperatures could lie in store.
You wouldn't go up to somebody in a pub to tell them about the bad weather forecast to say sub-zero temperatures could lie in store. It's not the way you talk. You turn the television on, and there is a human being telling you the news. And there is a barrier, an artificial barrier, if you get the impression they're just reading you a script out loud.
Well, the style that you use is quite tabloidy. It's quite simple. It's a case of letting the story be told by the picture, so the viewer doesn't want lots and lots of detail, doesn't want lots of background, just basically wants to be able to watch the pictures and have you explain the background and explain what you're seeing, really.
Moscow scientists say the cause was a massive anticyclone from Siberia, bringing with it temperatures of minus 20.
It seems like you need maths. Basically, you've got to add and subtract and work out how long every word is going to take you. So inevitably I've had a few pauses, a few fluffs, and the first time I overwrote, I wrote too much. Which looked a bit daft, and so I've had to learn my lesson and cut down.
The essence of writing to pictures is not to view each picture in isolation. It's to try and gather and collect some pictures and then write in a sequence to those pictures. The danger when they start is that they get very tied up with the mathematics of it at 3 words a second. And as most pictures in television news last approximately 3 seconds, they feel that their words are having to chase each picture in isolation.
The day today. The last scintilla of doubt just rode out of town.
Like a kind of double-barreled shotgun. The message is coming at you simultaneously. The words and the pictures have to work together. And I think it's making sure they're complementary. The main thing is not to allow the words to simply describe the pictures.
Oxford Street in London with 3 policemen and a knotted tape barrier. A stray dog was spotted here an hour ago and everybody ran out. Police then isolated the area containing the dog and told the public to clear off.
As well as location reports, the day-to-day team parodied another news staple, the graphic sequence.
The only way police can neutralise bomb dogs is to spray them with a resin coating which hardens instantly to contain any explosion. The inside of the bomb dog is obviously destroyed, but the outside stays the same shape.
One thing the graphics would do is to break things down into a lot of stages and levels and try and clearly label those stages of animation, so to very naturally lead the viewer's eye and explain a story. Normally, they're keywords actually taken from the journalist's narration going over the top. Not only did the words explain the graphic, but were used to quite comic effect.
If the underside is not covered, a highly directional blast launches the animal vertically to a height of over 1,000 feet.
I think the intention behind the whole programme was that it shouldn't be a programme which is funny because things go wrong or because things are badly made. The intention was to make it super efficient, super clean, super real, super newsy, like News Plus. Everything that you would want to do in a news programme, but you quite often don't have time.
So there's the beginning of time globe. The following globe is a more up-to-date representation of Earth as we know it, but with this slightly ridiculous self-importance of having Great Britain oversized compared to the rest of the world. Again, the background to that pound coin globe shows images of people in stock exchanges and takes patterns from currency. So everything should relate. Then we have a sports globe. The background layer has some videotape of a snooker player. We would combine that video with a texture, that texture related to the generic feeling of the show, but also within that texture were lines taken off of sports reference, so football pitches or athletics tracks. There's many sports cliches in one graphic. The animations are quite dramatic. All of these globes and things pouring out towards you. In some ways quite threatening. And maybe that's something news does, is it very much imposes itself upon the viewer. It says, this is what we're going to tell you, you look at this.
The Bank of England is in chaos following the discovery that the pound has been stolen. The pound was stolen at 1:30 this afternoon by thieves dressed as cleaners. They drove a white Montego.
The key thing is about dramatising the news. Obviously, their opening titles are incredibly dramatic. They love to have that sense of urgency. We are live for no particular reason. It's glossed over with a kind of matiness, and it produces this kind of other world of the news studio, which is unlike any other world we've all experienced.
Yeah, but you can't be saying we should get rid of the speed limits.
The day-to-day studios in impressive, dark, slightly menacing tones, bigger than is necessary. Chris Morris sits at an enormous desk with his very own Star Trek control panel, 3 little monitors and other big monitors scattered all over the place. We wanted to give the feeling that the news was happening and rushing down and pouring onto his desk from every corner of the globe. Which then means that when we do our comedy stories, we completely undermine that and create the juxtaposition, the believability that the bollocks that we're telling is true because it's told in apparently such a genuine, intended way.
Travel now from Valerie Sinatra in her pod a mile above the centre of Great Britain. Valerie, talk me some road.
Another presentation issue was the choice of voices and presenters. Gender, accent and styles of delivery were all used to particular effect.
His skin across 3 lanes, so watch out. All the actors took it in turns to play different presenters of different items. And those we tended to base on sort of local news journalists. We tended to give them slightly, not exactly regional accents, but slightly off-standard accents, or the odd speech impediment, or something, just to imply that perhaps they hadn't quite made it to the main news, and that was why Chris Morris was presenting the main bits and we were all pushed out to the periphery. Finally, a look at the capital, which is London. Worse than ever tonight, I'm afraid. Lots of cars on Oxford Street being slowed down by their own lights.
And remember, we want somebody to do graphics as well. We've got a graphics hour. Varen's going to do graphics. Yeah. So if you can think of a story that would lend itself to graphics and try and do something, cast around. I mean, look in the newspapers even, Varen.
3 days later, and the next step for the trainees, bringing studio, location reports and graphics together in a 15-minute bulletin.
Yes, good morning.
The deadline, 3 o'clock.
Whether there'll be anything new coming in, I imagine there will be. Confirmation's not till 3:30, so we won't get that, but I think you can do a kind of a preview.
Short, sharp sentences, keep it simple. They get completely blinkered by the computer screen, where they're tapping away. And we always say to them, look, stop, read this out. And they are very much confined, as it were, by writing in one medium for broadcasting in another.
James, try and think of the headline for this television channel thing. So the bids are in to run Britain's 5th television channel. Will Rupert Murdoch add another something to his media empire? I can't think of the something.
The theme is always trying to develop good spoken English as opposed to journalese. Obviously, tabloid journalism is in love with short monosyllables which are punchy and dramatic. Bid, probe, shock. And it is very easy to believe that this is the right currency for news.
But yeah, something more than element.
Another block to his media empire.
Look set to...
Block, what about block? Block to his media empire? Does that sound good?
Element. Well, you agree that...
Another conquest, no.
It's trying to make sure the vocabulary is a natural spoken vocabulary. And the other type of journalese is this phraseology which is one that we've just come to expect. Fleets of ambulances rush the injured to hospital. Well, why are ambulances always in fleets? And, well, yes, they normally take people to hospital as quickly as is sensible. It's just one of those phrases.
Asset.
Asset. That's it. Asset to his media empire. Brilliant.
Adjectives are really taboo. I mean, not entirely, but you don't actually need adjectives the way you do in other media. That's partly because the power of the pictures is actually conveying the words and the sense. So, for instance, if you're talking about somebody wearing a stunning outfit, you could either see that as being editorial. I mean, who am I to say that it's a stunning outfit? Viewers may think it's the most appalling dress that's ever been seen on television. Secondly, if it is that stunning, then the viewer can see that for themselves. You don't need to waste words describing in television. What you're always trying to do in television is actually add something to what you're seeing.
This is your first time, you know?
Yeah, I've seen other people doing it.
Yeah, okay.
There is a picture, just to warn you, about a minute in, I think, there's a picture of people hoisting white flags outside buildings, and I could write into that.
Okay.
The trainees have 30 minutes in an edit suite to put their stories together.
Throw that grenade.
It's a very severe discipline. It's like the art of précis, trying to make sure that not a second is wasted, that the pictures do actually give a balanced, brief portrait of what went on, not distorting the event, and trying to put all those things together into a fairly disciplined, maybe 120-second report does take a great deal of work. Everyone's learning how to do it all the time.
Shot this time for you, I think.
The day-to-day team chose to deliberately unlearn a lot of what they knew about putting television together in order to parody particular news styles, like the distinctive differences in the way different countries shoot and edit the news.
America now, and this report.
Milwaukee State Penitentiary, and on death row, it's wedding bells, not execution yells, as condemned strangler Chapman Baxter prepares to tie the knot with female felon Charlene Gray.
The look of the American stories was very important. You had to believe that they came from America. It's more than just Barbara Wintergreen's American accent. Barbara is queen of alliteration.
Meanwhile, Baxter's bride-to-be is busy with last-minute preparations for her impending ending. Did you ever kill anyone?
Only my dog.
The Americans are far more hack and slash than we are. They use a few too many shots, and there's no finesse in the editing because all the shots are grabbed. You just slap it in to illustrate the point that you're currently making.
We chose to use all the wobbly shots that we could find. We used all the zooms that we could find. Generally the ones that didn't resolve and focus at the end were the preferred takes.
It's the morning of the nupticution, and everything's ready to give these newly deads a sizzling send-off.
I'm just going to take the shot as if it's being grabbed through a melee of other cameramen and photographers. I'll go in a little bit further so the zoom's already started. It's always a good thing to let something come into frame and also to exit it if you can. In news you don't have that luxury. So the way that we do that, and it all sounds very repetitive, you just come in bang on the zoom. The editing is the way by which you apply the grammar, if you want to talk about it as a language, which you can either follow or not, depending on what you want to do. Good grammar would be to pause, let the camera pull back, pause on the end, cut. But we're using very bad grammar here.
We've really worked hard at, we've given him his own room, he's got his Bon Jovi posters,
The transfer of the material from their television system to ours comes across very badly. And we put it through a whole load of different electronic processes to actually create the look that you actually see on the screen.
You've been smashing Nada, is that true?
Yeah, we may have.
And of course, it's 100 times worse than it would really appear on the TV, but everybody is convinced by it because it looks so real.
At this fallopian factory, people come for a...
The final element, the performance. Body language, intonation and dress, all adding to the effect.
Marcia, the wardrobe woman, and I went shopping and bought bright orange trouser suits, bright yellow skirt suits, all sorts of things. Everything that was bright, sort of vivid colours and gold buttons. It was all mock Chanel, it was mock Christian Dior. She looked like she had a lot of money. The wig that Lisa Cavalli-Green gave me was immaculate. The makeup was inches thick. All of that combines to give you a complete posture. You have to smile in a particular way if your makeup's that thick. You know, you can't move your head too much. Like, I mean, I, in normal speech, tend to move my head around a lot, but Barbara couldn't do that. She had to be very poised. The nails dictate that you hold the microphone in a particular way.
Barbara Wintergreen, CBN News at the Natus Institute, San Spirito, California.
Once it's roughly done, that's cool. Thank you, mate. Berlin is Terry.
Okay. Which item number is it?
If the wrong name comes up, don't worry, alternate. I'll cue you over the correct camera, hopefully. Here we go, stand by.
A bomb attack on the Croatian capital Zagreb has killed 3 people and left many injured. The attack is a severe blow to the United Nations' efforts to make peace. The bids are in to run Britain's 5th national channel. Will Rupert Murdoch add another asset to his media empire?
Television is about teamwork, not only in terms of the technology, but actually in the authorship of the words you're writing. You may start off writing a script, which will be then checked by several people up the chain before it actually is delivered to a presenter to read it on autocue. They're changing it actually in order to speak it in their particular personal style. It doesn't make it right or wrong, it's just the way they read it.
Today is the 50th anniversary of the fall of Berlin to the advancing Russian army. The event marked the end of Nazi rule and the start of...
They're only seeing 3 words in one line, and at any one time they're probably only seeing 3 lines. And if they don't feel that the sentence is ever going to end, we get the frightened rabbit and they stare at the screen and it all looks horrible and the viewer gets very upset and stops listening.
After 2 weeks of battle, the flags of surrender went up, and over the Reichstag building, the Soviet flag was hauled. Today, after years of division, Berlin's...
The main junction that I wanted to hit was, it went from the black and white archives picture of Berlin during the war, and then it cut to the colour picture of Berlin today, hey presto, and that happened.
There'll be no formal celebrations today to mark its fall, but events of 50 years ago helped make Berlin what it is today.
A little bit of electric excitement.
The trainees have come a long way. When it's going well, it looks and sounds like the real thing.
The surprise bomb raid came shortly after 8:30 this morning, sending plumes of smoke billowing across Zagreb.
All the visual and verbal conventions they've been learning to use come across as natural and transparent, and we seem to be looking straight out onto the real world.
Now the main news again. War has returned to the Croatian capital, Zagreb.
It's only when things go wrong or are pushed to the limit by parody that you realise how carefully contrived these conventions actually are.
Apparently by a hacksaw falling from a tree onto her head.
There's always a danger that we'll fool ourselves that this is a totally natural process, whereas it isn't. And there's an irony there, isn't there? Remember when the famous American anchorman Walter Cronkite finally retired, and he was a very, very successful and popular man. He was asked what was the secret of his success, and he said, sincerity. If you can fake that, you've got it.
That's all for now from Sarah and me. There'll be more news at 4 o'clock. Good afternoon.